Thanks for joining us for CBN News Today. I'm Charlene Aaron. Voters sent a clear message to Democrats last night, sending them packing in the Senate and governor's mansions across the country. Republicans are celebrating, but as Jennifer Wishon reports, they'll soon have to get to work putting their campaign promises into action.
After a sweeping election, there's no question Republicans are in charge on Capitol Hill.
Are you having a good time?
Minutes after polls closed in Kentucky, Senator Mitch McConnell was declared the winner of a closely watched race against Democrat Allison Lundergan Grimes, putting him in position to become Senate Majority Leader and setting the mood for the GOP for the night.
For too long, this administration has tried to tell the American people what's good for them and then blame somebody else when their policies didn't work out. Tonight, Kentucky rejected that approach.
Voters across the country rejected the president's policies, helping Republicans rack up victories in 7 states, including North Carolina, Colorado, and Iowa, the state that launched President Obama into the White House. Their voters elected a conservative woman who grew up on a pig farm and who says her mission is to go to Washington and cut pork.
Well, Iowa, we did it! We did it!
In Kansas, incumbent Senator Pat Roberts held on to his seat after a strong challenge from independent Greg Orman. In Virginia, a state pundits didn't think was in play, voters gave Democrat incumbent Mark Warner a scare, as it looked like Republican Ed Gillespie may win. But Warner declared victory after hanging on by less than 1% of the vote. Gillespie could request a recount.
Well, it was a hard-fought race. It went a little longer than we thought.
In the House, Republicans are on track to meet or exceed 246 seats and make history, electing Mia Love in Utah, making her the first black Republican woman elected to Congress. And Elise Stefanik in New York, the 30-year-old becomes the youngest woman ever elected to Congress. In governor's mansions, many Democrat incumbents will spend the holiday season packing their bags, as GOP candidates won governor's races in the president's home state of Illinois and other reliably blue states like Massachusetts and Maryland.
Wow, what a historic night in Maryland.
Big nights for Scott Walker in Wisconsin, Rick Scott in Florida, and Sam Brownback in Kansas, as all 3 Republican governors held on to their seats. Back in Washington, President Obama now has no allies in the congressional majority to help push his agenda his last 2 years. He'll meet Friday with congressional leaders to discuss the road forward. Sometimes blaming the other side is easier than doing the hard work of governing. Now that it appears Republicans have a majority on Capitol Hill, they'll have to roll up their sleeves and get to work appeasing an electorate that's tired of gridlock. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, Capitol Hill.
Regent University Executive Vice President Dr. Paul Bonajelli served in the George W. Bush administration, and he joins us now for some analysis. Thanks for joining us this morning.
My pleasure.
Certainly a big win for the GOP. Was this more of a, for the GOP, a win for them, more so against the president?
I think mostly against the president, no question. But when you look at federal races, you know, the Senate races, when you look at governor's races, House races, legislatures, across this country, Democrats were repudiated. So it's not necessarily an endorsement for the Republicans, but it is saying the way things have been happening, the Democrat brand is in real trouble, and they want to try the other side. It's a protest vote, but the Republicans get an opportunity out of it.
Definitely. Well, Mitch McConnell will likely become the Senate Majority Leader. Tell us about him and how you expect him to lead.
You know, I was working for Congress when he came into the Senate, and he was not someone you would think would end up as a Senate Majority Leader and making big waves. He's changed that. I think he's going to be a determined leader, whether or not he can actually bring everybody with him in a unified way, simply because he has been through the worst of it. He almost lost his seat in a primary. He survived through this quite well, and there are a lot of senators that came into power on their own right. They weren't just a rejection of Obama. They campaigned well, like Joni Ernst in Iowa and others. And so he's going to have a collection of people that are feeling their time to do something. He won't be just a fatherly, leader. He's going to have to get people together to really do what he wants.
Indeed. Well, Texas Senator Ted Cruz is renewing his call for repeal of Obamacare. Is that a possibility, you think?
I do think so. When you hear most of the Republican leaders talking openly about repeal and replace, they're very careful to add replace, that they know that they have to have something in place. But the polls have shown, 25 Democrats who supported Obamacare have lost their jobs since 2010. That's a lot of people, and it is a real repudiation of it.
Definitely. Well, the winners are certainly mainstream Republican candidates. Does that signal a decline for Tea Party
Actually, I don't think so. I think the Tea Party got very smart, and they became much more supportive of mainstream Republicans that they could stand. And the mainstream got better about saying, these people are not totally crazy. This is not the year when Republicans put up 4 or 5 kooks that you're totally embarrassed about what's going to come out of their mouth. Nothing like that happened. Good candidates who know how to run campaigns. They took advice from one another, and I think they've solved that problem for the most part.
The president is meeting with congressional leaders this week. Do you think that he'll try to work with the new Congress or continue pursuing his own agenda through executive orders?
The latter. I think the president will try to make nice. He could really surprise us and come out swinging this week. But I do think that the main thing to look for is the president is the kind of politician. Actually, he's not a very good politician, I think. He doesn't understand that compromise is necessary. He will insist on his way, and I think the Republicans have an opportunity to spend 2 years building a case for why the entire government needs to be trusted to them so that they can put into place, an agenda.
And talk about the big wins in governor races, too. And how big is that for the GOP nationwide?
These are huge. I mean, these are governor's races like in Maryland that you would have never expected to go to the Republicans. There are 3 or 4 pickups, and they are in blue states. And I think, again, it is a rejection of the brand the Democrats have put forward with President Obama. But the wins are pretty big. I mean, some of them are 2 or 3 points. Some of them are bigger than that. And I think it is an opportunity for the Republicans to build upon. And
talk about the big win in Virginia. It's really close right now.
Very close right now. I mean, if it stops right now, Warner holds on. But the fact that John Warner is struggling through the night and may win by 1 percentage point is unbelievable. And it's 2 things. It is a rejection of the president. It's proof that Virginia is not a blue state by any stretch of the imagination. It may be purple for sure, but it also is testimony to Ed Gillespie.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Paul Bonicelli. Well, the economy and national security topped the list of voter concerns Tuesday. 72% of those polled admitted they worry about another terrorist attack. 70% said the U.S. economy is in bad shape. Republican candidates campaigned against Obamacare, and for good reason. 47% of voters polled said the law goes too far. And in a year when numerous federal courts have struck down state marriage laws supporting traditional marriage, 49% of voters polled nationally on Tuesday voiced support for gay marriage. 48% were opposed. And recapping some ballot initiatives across the country, Tennessee voters approved a measure giving the state more power to regulate abortion clinics. But a Colorado proposal granting personhood to the unborn did not pass. And in North Dakota, an amendment requiring protection for life at every stage of development was defeated. In other ballot initiatives, Washington, D.C. voters approved a measure making it legal to grow and possess marijuana, but not sell it. And Oregon legalized the possession and sale of marijuana for those over 21 years old. In Florida, an amendment allowing medical marijuana use failed to achieve the 60% approval needed to pass there. And Republicans also swept governor's races across the country, including Ohio's John Kasich, who won re-election handedly. And Wisconsin's Scott Walker won a tough race in what's seen as a validation of his policies against big labor. Both governors are touted as potential candidates for the 2016 presidential election.
It's interesting, the challenges we faced. You see, there was a group out of Washington-based special interests who thought they could spend a lot of money and a lot of time in the state and somehow convince the people of the state to be against something. I got to tell you, I'm an optimist. I believed all along if we got a positive message out, that in the end, people of the state wanted to be for something, not against something. And look what happened tonight.
Meanwhile, in Kansas, embattled incumbent Governor Sam Brownback fought back a strong challenge to win his second term, and Rick Scott narrowly defeated Charlie Crist in Florida. Well, plummeting gas prices are a welcome sign across the country. Analysts say the national average for unleaded is below $3 at just over $2.97. Lower prices at the pump are a big treat for consumer spending just in time for the holiday season.
They're the lowest gas prices in 4 years.
and drivers across the country couldn't be happier.
It's going to go down even more. Thank God. Thank you. Thank you.
Even better for delivery drivers, man. I'm delivering in the Bay Area, and cheaper gas helps me and my family.
The national average, $2.99 a gallon. More than 60% of U.S. gas stations are currently selling gas lower than $3. Motorists in the Southeast are enjoying some of the cheapest prices in the country. But in one Texas town, $2.27 is the price to beat. That's cheaper than a gallon of milk in some places. Analysts cite several reasons for the cheaper pump prices, including U.S. oil production and more fuel-efficient cars, and refineries switching to production of less expensive winter blend gasoline. Drivers are saving anywhere from $10 to $20 a fill-up, leaving extra cash in their pockets.
With someone that commutes, it does add up over, the weeks and the months.
Those lower prices are a good sign for consumer spending as the holiday season approaches, because the more drivers save at the pump, the more they'll have to splurge on other pleasures. And AAA says gas prices are expected to stay at or below its current level at least through next spring. And some good news in the fight against Ebola. New numbers from Liberia show a dramatic decline in the rate of new infections. The Washington Post reports some of the busiest treatment facilities are only half full. Now, U.S. military officials are reevaluating plans to build 17 Ebola treatment facilities in the country. The original plan was for each facility to have 100 beds. Now officials say some could open with as few as 10 beds. So far, the U.S. has spent $360 million fighting Ebola in West Africa. Beaten and burned to death. That was the fate of a young Christian couple in Pakistan who allegedly desecrated the Quran. Pakistani police say a Muslim mob attacked the couple Tuesday in the eastern Punjab province. Under Pakistan's harsh blasphemy laws, anyone accused of insulting Islam or the Prophet Muhammad can be sentenced to death. The laws are often misused to settle personal scores and target minorities. Well, Pastor Saeed Abedini's mother has fled Iran out of fear for her safety. Saeed is the Iranian-born American pastor imprisoned in Iran for his faith. His mother has been an outspoken advocate for his release. Fox News reports that she's been barred from visiting him in jail and began to fear that she might be arrested too. After enduring constant threats and intimidation, she fled Iran with two of her children. Today, she's safe in another country and plans to come to the U.S. Coming up, how sex and violence on TV is hurting kids because parents are watching too much. A new study shows parents are becoming desensitized to sex and violence in entertainment, and that's having a direct impact on their children. Joining us now with more is Dr. Linda Mental, a licensed family therapist. She also writes a blog on BeliefNet. Thank you so much for joining us, Linda.
Great to be here.
So first of all, walk us through this study by the Annenberg Public Policy Center. What happened after they showed parents these edgy movies?
Well, it's really interesting because they used just brief segments of those movies, and it was only a short amount. But what they found after the parents watched those brief segments is that they began to rate the movies as not so problematic in terms of sex and violence. So what you normally would rate as an R rating, they would give a PG-13. And then what happened with that, as a consequence of that, they became much more lenient to what they thought was appropriate for their children to watch.
That is pretty interesting.
So what happens to the parents is that they get desensitized. So the real takeaway of the study is that the more and more you watch sex and violence in media, the more desensitized you become to that sex and violence. And then that has a ratings creep is what they call it.
That is actually my next question for you. This ratings creep, when movies that would have been rated R 20 years ago are now rated PG or PG-13.
Yeah, and the rate of violence in sexual content in movies has more than tripled since 1985. So if you just look at how much more is there, and then you think how much more we're exposed by the multiple screens that we can watch things on now, then this desensitizing effect is taking place not only for the parents, but also for those raters.
Definitely. Now, Linda, talk about the psychological implications for the next generation with all the extreme content, and we see so much of that. How does it affect the way that they see and treat other people.
So this is the important part for anybody who's watching and listening to us, because there are definite effects. The more that kids watch this kind of content, the less empathetic they are towards people in their environment. Second thing is, just like the parents, the kids are getting desensitized to the information as well. And then that translates into more aggression when they're in conflict or they need to problem solve because they've only seen these aggressive models. And so the other one with the sex is that we know, again, from studies, that if children are exposed earlier to sexual content, way before they can handle it, and more of it, then they tend to engage in sexual activity at an earlier age. And then there are some studies that do show that watching violence on television and in media does translate into some real life violence happening.
What's the takeaway for parents as well as adults, who are affected by
Right.
this?
So the big thing for parents is, first of all, understand how this is impacting your kids. But what do you have to do then as a parent? You have to monitor what you're watching because you are becoming desensitized to that information. So what might have offended you a number of years ago is probably not offending you, and that is what happens with repeated exposure to this type of material. There's nothing in the Bible that says that this stuff is more right now just because we're more desensitized to it. We've allowed things to enter into our minds and into our hearts that are not going to help us with the right type of walk with God that we want to have and the holiness that God calls us to. So we really have to take some responsibility here.
Very important message for parents and adults.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Linda Mental.
Thanks.
Up next, 900 students from 51 countries, all under one roof. Find out why these children there are strangers no more. For the second time in 2 weeks, an Arab terrorist rammed his car into a crowd of pedestrians in Jerusalem. The attack killed one and injured 10 more. Israeli Minister Naftali Bennett accused Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas of inciting violence and called him the driver in the vehicle of death. Hamas welcomed the attack and said it was intended to defend the Al-Aqsa Mosque on the Temple Mount. Earlier in the day, Israeli police briefly closed the Temple Mount to subdue Arab rioters throwing rocks and firebombs. While religion is the great dividing line in the Middle East, the world's three largest faiths began in the region and they struggle to live together. But what if we told you there's a place where Jews, Muslims, and Christians come together in peace? It's a public school in Israel. Chris Mitchell brings us this remarkable story.
Welcome to Bialik Rogazin, a Tel Aviv public school with 900 students from 51 countries.
מאיפה המשפחה שלך? מהפיליפינים. This is Israel from the Philippines. אני נולד בקונגו. נתנאל. קונגו? What is your name? Netanel.
Christians, Jews, Muslims, together.
Not every day you see Arabic kids with Philippine kids go inside the gate together. Not every day in other schools you see the friendship of different kind of kids. Hanging out together.
During Christmas time, we do have the Christmas tree and the Chanukiah, which is the light for the Jewish, and the lamb of the Muslims.
The school is located in a neighborhood full of cast-offs, immigrants, and those struggling to make ends meet. Some of the school's children have seen unimaginable horrors, things that would break even the strongest adult.
We have kids that are refugees, that they came all the way in the desert. They moved from country to country for 3-4 years. They saw the parents killed just in front of their eyes. A kid that comes sometimes by himself. He doesn't have anyone in the world.
I see that my father, they killed front of me. What can I do? I don't know to cry. I don't know what can I do. And I say, no, right now I can lie here. And I lie in a ground with my grandmother and my father. And after they go, I see my grandmother and my father, they die. I don't know what can I do, and I ran.
A documentary about the school won an Oscar back in 2011. A team of teachers, social workers, and therapists help the students adjust to their new lives. They also help the students stay connected to their cultures. Most schools in Israel close their doors at 3 in the afternoon, but Bialik Rogazim stays open from 7:30 a.m. to 10 p.m. so the parents can learn and participate too.
When I came to the school, and he approached me that Mr. Nahama Eli, he wanted to have a choir in different nationalities. So I loved the idea. So I thought of it. So we created this choir, the papas and mamas, and we became family.
Empowering the girls takes a special priority.
Most of them come from very, very low belief in their abilities and very low self-image.
Sometimes I need my mom for girly stuff.
Her mother was a role model, and we grew up from a God-fearing family. She knows about the Christian life of how to respect one another, how to fear God.
He came here because this is the land of God. Now I feel safe.
None of this would be possible without the many volunteers.
I used to be a counselor in a youth movement before I came to volunteer here, but I've never felt such a connection with some kids. And I don't know, it impacted a lot of my way of thinking, like it changes things.
Working at the school is more than a job. It's a calling for many.
I'm privileged to run this place that is shown the beautiful face of Israel and Judaism. This is the face of Israel that I believe.
Something they teach every day.
This is what we try to give them. Boxes of tools for life, skills for life. This is why we are lucky, because we are blessed to be able to give and give and give, and we do it with love.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Tel Aviv.
Finally today, everyone's heard that exercise is good for you, but did you know it can still pay off even if you're older? A new study found that older people who walked and did basic strength exercises every day have a better chance of staying mobile. The study is being published in the Journal of the American Medical Association. It involved people from 70 to 89 years old. Many of them who started the study had health problems like diabetes and high blood pressure, and even previous heart attacks and strokes. Well, that's it for now on CBN News Today. We hope you'll join us next time. Have a great day and God bless.